Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things could get totally radical. Now, I am just so excited for today's episode because I'm going to be interviewing a rock and roll legend, a man who was one half of one of the greatest duos of all time in rock and roll, Jan and Dean. I'm going to be interviewing Dean Torrence today, and I'm just so excited. The guy was part of that surf rock scene in California in the early 60s, and they were pretty popular for a little bit, and then some tragic things happened that kind of made their careers crash, so to speak. And I'm having him on the show today to talk about what went on, and they did some amazing stuff in that short time. They were the host of the Tammy Show, the first landmark concert movie. They got to do a movie that unfortunately didn't get completed because of an accident. They recorded a couple great albums that didn't get released until many, many years later. One, of course, was called Save for a Rainy Day, and the other one was Carnival of Sound. And they're pretty great psychedelic surf albums. I put them up against Pet Sounds any day. They're so great. And it's going to be an honor to talk to him today. So yeah, here is my interview with Dean Torrence.
Hello.
Hey Dean, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thank you. I'm assuming this is Tommy, right?
Yes, this is Tommy.
Yeah, all right. Cool. Where are you?
I am in Redding, California.
Oh, okay. So you're obviously in our time zone, isn't that nice?
Yes.
I like Redding.
It's one of my least favorite places. I've been here 3 years. I'm originally from San Francisco.
I didn't say I would like living there, but I remember passing through. It wasn't so bad.
Yeah, I mean it's a nice place to look at. I'll give you that much. But this is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, sure.
I just
a good excuse for not having to deal with our patio because we're having Mother's Day, tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I do have some folks coming over, but just told my wife, hey, you're going to have to finish it. I have a podcast to do. It'll probably be at least 5 hours. So even when we hang up, I'll pretend I'll just stay up at my office.
I don't know if it'll be 5 hours, but I'm sure it's going to be fun for the next hour at least.
Oh, good.
Did you hear Little Richard passed?
Yeah, I just got sent that message. Yeah. And I sent a message back that said, good golly, Miss Molly, shoot.
Yeah.
I liked him. He was a good guy.
Yeah, you knew him?
Yeah, always very nice.
Yeah, the architect of rock and roll.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Super talented dude.
So,
I like them.
Yeah. So going back in time, before you and Jan got together, did you always gravitate toward music early on in your childhood?
I suppose I did. I wasn't overly aware of it. But my parents always had music going on, so I got used to their music, and I rather liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And then along came Little Richard, and it was all over,
Mm-hmm.
I think that he may have been one of the first albums that I bought was Little Richard's.
Wow. Before rock and roll, though, I mean, were you listening to like big band and Sinatra and all that?
Yeah, probably. That's what my parents liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, Perry Como and of course they did like Sinatra, and they liked the big bands too. So I did know a lot of those melodies.
Yeah.
So you would listen to them. They also liked Hawaiian music, which was fun to hear. So I learned to loved listening to any sort of old tiki lounge type Hawaiian music. I still like it today, actually.
Mm-hmm. So, Little Richard being the first record you bought, do you remember the first concert you went to?
Yes. Doo-wop. I went to see Frankie Lyman and the Juniors.
Nice.
Jesse Belvin. I think Little Willie John. I think he was there too. So it was all doo-wop, which was the first genre I really liked as a teenager. And that's kind of how Jan and I met, or through listening to those kinds of records.
Mm-hmm. Listening to like the Cadillacs and
The Moonglows, Penguins,
the Silhouettes.
Yep.
All those groups.
And Dion. I mean, we liked some of those Italian vocal groups too, as well. The Mystics.
Later on, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I guess we like them.
Yeah.
I mean, we like the songs. The songs were really good. But in terms of anything new, I mean, they were just kind of more of the same, and doing it well, mind you.
Yeah.
But the guys that used to be singing out on the street corners were the guys that we really appreciated.
Yeah. So you met Jan in junior high playing football, and then again in high school.
High school.
Yeah. Yeah. You two used to sing in the school showers.
Well, they were the sports showers, so
yeah.
After a workout or after a game, you'd end up in those showers, of course.
Yeah.
And the tile in those old showers that were probably built in at least the 40s, all had a really neat tile. All that tile was used in making echo chambers later on. All the studios were actually building echo chambers made out of that same kind of tile.
Mm-hmm.
We just got it organically, and and if you started singing one of those songs that you liked, that you're listening to on the radio, they all had vocal parts, so all the guys would kind of pick out a part, and it sounded really good in that shower room because of that really nice tile.
Yeah. And one of your teammates was James Brolin.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty funny, pretty ironic too.
Although I think he was on the football team. I think he probably maybe track or tennis. He'd be more like a tennis dude.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit on that Hollywood side. He didn't want to break any bones or break his nose, of course, because he was going to be a big star.
Yeah. So then you two got some friends together and formed the Barons for a school talent contest?
Yeah. We were already in kind of a car social, just rat pack of club anyway. So we picked out people that were in our club, and the club happened to be named the Barons. So we just became the musical entity, the Barons, out of the Barons larger club. We probably had 30 or 40 guys in the club. And then we would always have at least 10 guys that enjoyed singing and singing doo-wop. So our vocal groups were pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of vocals.
And did you guys win the contest?
Of course we did. Of course we did. Also, we added in to, even though it was almost a cappella, we did bring along a drummer and a piano player. Jan had a neighbor who was a piano player who was a couple years younger than we were. And then I had a friend that just happened to play drums. It was a neighbor of mine who was a little bit older than we were. Mm-hmm. But we all still went to the same high school. And Jan's neighbor was a guy named Bruce Johnston.
Oh, yeah. Later on, the Beach Boys.
Yep. Well, we introduced him to the Beach Boys. And our drummer, Sandy Nelson, that was my neighbor. He used to mow his lawn. Mm-hmm. You remember that name?
I'm trying to remember.
Dean B.
Who?
He told us in 1957 that he dreamed about doing a record that just was all drums. And we kind of chuckled at him and thought he was crazy. And about 3 years later, he had a #1 record, all drums. Just goes to show you.
Oh, Team Beat, right?
Team Beat, yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, now I know who he is. Yeah.
I think he had another 1 or 2 chart records, but Team Beat was the big one.
You guys laughed at him because he was trying to be like the
Oh, well, yeah, especially Jen. Jen thought he was absolutely crazy.
You thought he was trying to be the Buddy Rich of rock and roll?
Yeah, who would buy a record all with drums?
And did you guys try to get signed?
No, I mean, Jan may have always kind of had that in the back of his mind. Mm-hmm. I mean, he literally was a genius, mm-hmm. and about 177 IQ, so Mensa type. Mm-hmm. So he didn't really have to study that much. Mm-hmm. For the rest of us, that either if we were playing sports, we would stay and work out maybe for a couple of hours after school, and then pretty much after that we went home, had dinner, and did homework. Well, he was so damn bright, he didn't usually have to do hardly any homework, so he had a lot of extra time on his hands. But he was pretty much our alpha dog. He led us, and I'm sure in the back of his mind he was thinking about going public with the thing. But the rest of us, I didn't ever hear any mention of taking our tapes or anything to a real record company. Mm-hmm. 95% of the time we were just doing songs, and mostly covers, just for ourselves and for the parties. Jan used to have legendary parties at his house almost every weekend or every other weekend. So he had a tape recorder. Most of us barely even had little portable record players. But he had. Not only did he have a tape machine, he had 2 of them. He had 2 hand-picked, pretty much semi-professional recording equipment. So we would sing our songs, and he would splice them into a tape, and then do some of the other songs from the record collection and mix ours into that, and that would be pretty much our soundtrack for the party. And we would also, as like disc jockeys, introduce songs and then dedicate songs to people that we knew that were going to be at the party. Yeah. It was but again, Jan had all that free time because he didn't have to study. Came from a very wealthy family, so he didn't have to have an after-school job like most of the rest of us.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he would think up of all of this stuff, and we would just kind of do whatever he told us to do. And it was always a great time anyway.
Yeah, didn't his father work for Howard Hughes?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where we got the tape recorders from Howard Hughes. He gave the tape recorders to Jan's dad because he knew that he had heard, or Jan's dad told Howard about his kid, and how this kid was very interested in recording and all that. So I think when Howard Hughes knew he was going to be upgrading his audiophile stuff, he said, "Hey, Bill, you know, why don't you give these to your boy? He should really like them." And like them, hell yeah, we loved them. I'm thinking without having tape recorders to kind of practice on, we may have never, ever made a record.
Mm-hmm.
Because I suppose, I mean, the only way you could get a record deal was to put something on tape.
Right.
We had no way of, you know, making a pressing or anything. So you have to have it on tape, and or I suppose there were some artists that just go around and knock on doors at a record company and do a live audition. But those were few and far between. Most of the time, a record producer might be going to clubs and stuff like that to hear people play live, and then maybe sign somebody that they heard playing live, but we weren't playing live anywhere. The only live thing we ever did was have one high school talent show.
Mm-hmm. And then you went into the Army for a while, and then Jan had a partner, Arnie.
Yeah, he was one of the barons, one of
mm-hmm.
the 6 or 8 guys. About the time we graduated from high school, that's when everybody kind of headed off in different directions.
Yeah.
So by that time, being seniors and almost getting ready to graduate, we were all thinking about where we were going, what we were going to be doing after high school. And I had made the decision, along with some other high school buddies, to go into the Army because the Army was offering a 6-month reserve deal that you could get in on at the time, where you could do 6 months of active duty. That's not very long. Rather than waiting to get drafted, and you get drafted here in for 2 or 3 years. So we heard about this program you could do, and you only had to do 6 months. And so we gave up one summer, and that was 6 months. If you gave up part of your, I'm guessing it was fall.
Mm-hmm.
And then anyway, the bottom line was we would get out of the Army right by September, and we could, for those of us that were going to college, we would then start college in September, and the others were all heading off in other directions.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a pretty good deal. So yeah, I got the 6 months done with, which was one of the smartest things I ever did. I didn't think so at the time when I, in the middle of doing my 6 months, I heard our record on the radio, and I thought, hell, how did I miss it?
Yeah.
And then by that time, as I said, everybody kind of went off in different directions, and it was kind of the last man standing, and Arnie happened to be around and at the time, and we did want to be a vocal group, but guys kept coming in and going out, and just by default, we ended up both times being in a duo. I don't even think Arnie wanted to be in a duo. He wanted to be singing harmony parts with other guys, but we became a duo, like it or not.
Mm-hmm. How long was it before Door Records signed you guys?
Well, Jan had that hit. Well, he had a hit and a couple of chart records, but they weren't as big as that first record Jan and Arnie did. And then Arnie kind of lost interest. And by that time, I had gotten out and had just started college. And then some of the same old high school buddies called me up, said, "Welcome home. You want to play some Sandlot football?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Sure." And I showed up, and Jan was there. I was really surprised. I thought he must be on the road,
Yeah.
or hanging out with Annette Funicello somewhere. And we had a friendly little football game. Same group of guys that worked together through most of 3 or 4 years in high school. It was great to see everybody. And after that little football game, Jan said, "Do you want to come up to the house and work on some music?" I said, "Well, where's Arnie?" He said, "He's no longer interested." "So you interested?" I said, "Hell yes."
Wow.
And that was the start of it. So that was about a year after Jan and Arnie had their biggest hit.
Mm-hmm. And Baby Talk was the first big hit you two had.
Yeah.
It's got this kind of doo-wop and Everly Brothers feel to it. It was before you guys got into the surf sound.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were pretty much stuck doing what we were doing because we only had 2 vocals. And pretty much still, recording-wise, even in recording studios, you had pretty much a 1-track tape recorder.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't do multiple vocals and stack vocals and all that stuff that came later. So we were kind of stuck having to do, duo records because we only had 2 vocals. If you wanted background vocals, you would have to hire some background singers to come into the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So it pretty much had to be kind of recorded all at once. Or sometimes, if you were in a quality recording studio, you could do a track and then take that track and bounce it onto a second tape recorder,
mm-hmm.
and then sing along with the track you had just done. But every time you went from machine to machine, you would lose a little bit of quality. So you didn't particularly want to do that too many times. They called it bouncing from one track to another machine that was also a 1-track machine. But soon thereafter, there became stereo, so you did have 2 tracks on one machine. That helped a little bit, and we could start doing some harmonies to what we were doing. And then we discovered, 4-track, and on we went. Then we could be a vocal group without having a bunch of guys that you had to split your money with.
Yeah. And Lou Adler and Herb Alpert produced it. They were brand new to the label, right?
Well, they actually helped establish what we had done. They brought us Baby Talk.
Mm-hmm.
When it was decided we were all going to be partners, it was Lou and Herb that had found some sort of demo or maybe even it was a pressing. It's Baby Talk, I think, had come out by some group that was on a real small label, and nothing ever happened with it. And Lou and Herb had heard that version and had just kept it in their files as something they kind of liked. And we all decided to get together. They went to their file, pulled out this record, and said, "What about this?" Because we were struggling to find a good. I mean, songs are not that easy to find, good ones.
Right.
And that certainly was. Baby Talk was a lot better than any of the stuff we had been working on. So we jumped off of the stuff we've been working on, and then Herbert Lou got involved in helping put Baby Talk together for us.
Mm-hmm.
Herb wrote music. Jan was just learning to write music, and Herb could write music, so he made all the instrumental tracks. He did all the arrangements for all those. And they were already used to going to the studio, so they knew the right musicians to call to come in. So it's very helpful to have two guys that I think they were about four years older than we were.
Yeah.
To me, anybody in there, we were still in our teens, and they were in their 20s, so they were adults to us.
Yeah. So how does the surf rock sound come into play?
Just being able to multi-record and fatten up the vocals and be able to sing 4-part harmonies and then putting a falsetto part on the top and a bass part on the bottom. So the vocals becoming bigger, even though in the beginning most of those vocals were just the two of us. But we made them sound like a group record. And then it was just a matter of, we met the Beach Boys. We did a couple of concerts with them.
Mm-hmm.
They were our backup band, but they would do an opening set on their own, doing their, at the time, two hits.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would sing along, add an extra 2 vocal parts, our vocal parts in on their songs. And we loved singing them. They were fun to sing. And we just thought we should be doing these same kind of Southern California beach culture records. I mean, we were beach culture guys. There's no reason why we can't sing about them. And Brian had all these extra tunes that he had written. So he would just give us stuff that he had lost interest in or he was never going to get around to doing. He had 10 or 20 songs, and they were all good. So he ended up giving us Surf City.
Mm-hmm. And that's the one that...
maybe half finished, as I recall.
Yeah.
But he had the basic structure down and maybe half the words, and we took it and added in some of the verses that he didn't quite finish or didn't finish at all. And worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's the one that took you guys to the moon for a while there.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, did everything begin to change after that?
Well, sure.
Yeah. I mean, you got...
Always helps to have a number one record. We'd had up to this point, 2 top 10 records.
Mm-hmm.
And probably maybe 2 or 3 or 4 top 20 records.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been on the charts, but you get into the top 10 and or 1, it puts you at a whole nother level.
Yeah. And there were all these great surf acts that were going on at that time. Other than you guys and the Beach Boys, there was Dick Dale, the Safaris, the Tornadoes, the Lively Ones. I mean, it just must have been pandemonium at those shows, and just having, all those screaming girls there.
Yeah, that was fun. We didn't work with any of those folks, so
mm-hmm.
It would have been too obvious to work with them. Most of the time we worked with the Beach Boys. So the vocal groups kind of all worked together, and the instrumental guys were doing kind of their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened at their concerts, but I assume they did pretty well.
And is it true Brian Wilson's father was irate that Surf City was a #1 hit for you guys?
Well, he was angry at Brian for giving it away.
Mm-hmm.
But, Brian tried to explain to him it was a song he wasn't going to finish. So should he just leave it in a drawer? I mean, it didn't make any sense that Brian, if we stole it from Brian or twisted his arm or something, I would understand. But he gave it to us because he wasn't any longer interested in it. So if he's a songwriter, that helps that he'll still get credit for what he wrote, so he'll be an equal writer and get an equal share. So it was actually, that just showed how stupid his dad was.
Yeah.
His dad was the administrator of Brian's publishing company.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a song he wasn't going to do or ever finish, probably. And it comes out, and it's a major hit. Brian gets a cut of it, a percentage of the record, and his publishing company also gets a percentage. So he gets a lot more percentage in it sitting in the drawer. Anyways, Dad was not too bright.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, he was pretty much like Colonel Tom Parker, making decisions and deals and being a bully and all that stuff.
Yeah. I'd say he's probably right in there, the Colonel.
Yeah.
Who did make some bonehead decisions, I think, personal point of view. But from what I hear and have read, Elvis didn't want to do a whole lot of that stuff.
Oh, of course. Yeah, especially the movies, But,
he had, we had all sorts of offers to do those beach movies.
Mm-hmm.
Never do them. Now, other managers or other bands would say, hey, got you in a movie. Oh, boy. Without asking, is this going to be a movie that is going to actually make you look good, or that you won't be embarrassed of being a part of? Most times, young people, bands wouldn't even think of asking that question. It's, oh boy, you're going to be in a movie. Well, that's not necessarily going to be good for you. Not necessarily, just because it's a movie.
Yeah.
So we turned them all down until we finally got an offer of one where we were the stars, and not just showing up as some sort of guest spot. And it would have worked out fine. As it turned out, first day of shooting, Jan got hurt, and a bunch of other people got hurt.
Yeah.
And the movie was canceled.
Yeah, that was Easy Come, Easy Go.
Yep, that certainly was easy come, easy go, for sure.
And that was ironically the title of an Elvis movie that Paramount ended up.
We were just talking about Elvis, too.
Yeah.
Title. It was a great title.
Yeah. It's ironic, too. Yeah, and then after that, Jan ended up having another accident, which was ironic to your big hit, Dead Man's Curve.
Yep.
Man, he must have suffered a lot during that period.
Yeah, that was not easy.
Yeah.
Shit happens, I say.
Yeah. You guys, too, were one of the few music acts that were also going to college and being focused on studies. Did you both know in the back of your minds that this could all end tomorrow?
That's why we were in school.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have been there had we believed that business would be there forever, or you could make a living doing it. we were enjoying it. It was fun. It was actually really, really fun. So we were doing it as long as it was fun, and then at the same time making sure we had our butts covered by having something to fall back on. That would be a real career.
Mm-hmm. In 1964, you two hosted and performed at the Tammy Show. I've always wanted to know what was the purpose of that show and what was trying to be accomplished with it.
That's a very astute question. It was kind of a brand new idea. And I guess the basic idea was interesting, but the application was kind of iffy. This guy had this idea of making this, it's more like a movie,
mm-hmm.
of all these musicians and with all these genres covered. So almost like Woodstock.
Yeah.
Okay? Different kinds of artists, all on one stage. And the idea was to make it a theatrical release. And that, in this guy's mind, all the people that owned theaters were going to be very excited to have. I mean, these are musicians that young people all wanted to see. And there wasn't that much on TV. I mean, you might watch the Dick Clark show and see artists, but kind of one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to view all of these artists on stage at the same time, and you couldn't do a live show like that very easily in those days. First of all, you didn't have the venues that understood you could do something that big, but it would just be way too expensive for somebody to try and pull off. So this was kind of like a traveling big rock and roll show, but the acts only perform once on film. So when the guy finished it and then started to look for distribution and the distribution to get this film into movie theaters, they just found it was a lot more difficult than they thought. Because it had never really been done before. And all the folks and companies that owned the theaters were used to movies, and they just didn't get this whole teenage thing. They didn't think the kids would show up. So I think it worked relatively well for a month or so, but it just didn't build from there. And a lot of the theaters just weren't interested in even trying it because it was just too bizarre to them. So I don't think it made any money. I don't remember ever getting any sort of royalties from it. It pretty much didn't do what they were hoping it would do. But it was a great piece of film. I think they realized they did have a good piece of film, but they might have to wait 10 years, 20 years for it to really be valuable.
Yeah.
So 20 or 30 years went by, or 40 years, and Dick Clark always appreciated it, and Dick had an idea he could do something with it, so he bought it from these guys. So the company ended up owning it, and then he cleaned it all up digitally, and then he rewrote all of the contracts. I mean, Dick was a billionaire, so he was going to do it the right way and not skimp on it. And he didn't want to cheat anybody. He loved artists and knew that artists got screwed all the time. Whenever you worked with Dick, you knew that you were always going to get paid and that he would treat you right. And it was always a pleasure working for him. So the fact that he would take this and then make it, put them on a DVD, all cleaned up and did some nice packaging, that this is very exciting. So most everybody re-signed their contracts, because we had signed the contracts that this would be in the theaters. So it had to all the contracts had to be redone for a DVD.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody signed. Everybody wanted to be on board and have that piece of film out, because most of us did realize, even though it was 40 years old plus, that it was a historic piece of film. And we were all, very lucky to have been a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first rock concert movie. I can't even think of one before that. I mean, it's so legendary. Steve Bender directed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Steve was just the director, and he did a hell of a great job. But being a young guy, he had a good eye, and he also knew music, so he knew how to put that whole thing together. Now the business people, as I said, were taking a big gamble, and for them it didn't really pay off.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily we had a good director, and so it was done well. So the production was all good, and even the quality of all the cameras and all of that were as good as you could buy at the time. Even the recordings were done by the best location recording studio guy in the business, a guy named Wally Hyder, as I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all professionals, and most of the live band, those were all studio guys, and we made sure that happened, that they were all the studio guys that played on most of the acts. These musicians had played on their records, including Leon Russell. I mean, it's really fun to see Leon sitting at a piano with a pompadour.
Yeah.
There was some heavyweight studio players in that band, and those bands that were self-contained and played on their own were all competent players too. So it was a really good show.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. In 1963 and 1966, you two had two TV pilots, Surf Scene and On the Run. What happened with those?
Surf Scene. I think Surf Scene was just kind of a summer replacement show.
Mm-hmm.
It was on local stations. I think that stuck around. I think that guy ended up doing at least 5 or 6, 7 shows, I think, that got played over maybe 2, 3 years every summer on local stations. That was Surf Scene. On the Run.
Mm-hmm.
On the Run. It was okay. It wasn't great, but it was kind of comedy, which we were heading towards doing comedy. And Jan was injured just before that, making our movie, and then that got scrubbed. And then he was kind of well enough, still on crutches, I think, for but we had to do this pilot if we wanted this thing to come out.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time the Monkees debuted.
Yeah.
So if we waited for Jan was going to be, better. I think he may have even still had a cast on his leg, or a soft cast. So we went ahead and shot it anyway, just because we had to get it done so that we would be in the rotation to come out that year. And it got sold, so we would have been on opposite kind of the Monkees. We probably wouldn't have been on the same night. We weren't on the same channel, so we wouldn't have gone head-to-head at all. But we already had hits, and they didn't. So we probably would have been the more popular show, at least in in the beginning, we would have had a head start on them. And we already had plans of being on each other's show. Kind of like what we would do with the Beach Boys. I mean, we didn't consider them competition.
Yeah.
No, but we could be buddies. So we'd be guests on their show. They could be guests on our show. And Beach Boys, we're going to be on our show. And then even have little running parts that they would play.
Yeah.
As well as wanted to be a gas station attendant. It was going to be in our movie. In each episode.
That would have been great. I think that would have been great.
When I look back on it,
mm-hmm.
It was kind of Saturday Night Live. Damn.
Yeah.
We were heading that direction. It was more skits. We'd do skits with
characters,
with our musician friends, and then we would have probably gained some. And we were meeting some of the comedians, the great comedians, and there were people like Jonathan Winters, who wanted to do some stuff with us, and Don Knotts, and
wow,
a few of those dudes. And almost all the guys, and it's a mad world. We met all those people, and they were all going to be in some of our stuff, mm-hmm. one time or another. So it would have become mostly comedy. Mm-hmm. And intermix the music, but there would be more comedy, and we could do skits, and we could do satire, even if we got political. We could do that. It was wide open.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
You were going to do a kind of a satire of Route 66. Mm-hmm. We had Corvettes. And we used to love to drive. Some dates, if they were within 100 miles, 100, 150, we would get in a Stingray and go to those. And so we'd be on the road and do all those kinds of neat things. Every time you stopped for lunch, something weird would happen, and you'd get lost, and you'd get cops chasing you because Jan liked to drive very quickly.
Yeah.
So we would incorporate all that into doing on our show I guess they're on once a week. We would do satires of Route 66. Of course, we would do Route 69. Mm-hmm. And then all through we could maybe do a whole, I guess they're half an hour, a whole half an hour of just driving around being lost. Because that actually really happened from time to time. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you didn't have GPS and all that. You'd be in some little podunk town trying to find your way around. And every time you stopped and asked for directions, the directions were so damn funny, bizarre. And we would do all of those. So we would have a Dennis Wilson, pull in a gas station and have Dennis Wilson come up and, try and give you directions and telling you go the opposite way that he needed to go. It just has so much fun with all that crap. It doesn't take much programming to fill up a half an hour.
Yeah. Wow.
You drive around for a half an hour.
Yeah.
Every time you stop, something weird would happen. And you never got to where you meant to go. And game shows, our managers are always trying to get us to do game shows, so we could do satires of all the game shows as being totally, those are kind of bizarre in their own way. Mm-hmm. We'd mess those up. So it was so much programming. It would have been easy. It would have been a slam dunk. So you were all always stuck just doing music, where you get tired and, soon an audience would lose interest if you kept doing the same 8 or 9 songs over and over again.
Mm-hmm. What was the genesis of the album Save for a Rainy Day?
We had been given a song, some sort of rain song. We thought, we did summer songs, and we thought maybe during the fall or winter or fall, it didn't make any sense to put out songs about surfing or even cars, because most of the rest of the world or the United States, it's not driving around like we could all year long in a convertible. So we had to kind of find some other form of something that was more related to the time of year, being, in our mind, off season.
Mm-hmm.
So we considered this song that this friend of ours wrote, and then he wrote another one about some sort of rain record too. Yeah, Yellow Balloon, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they were good enough songs. And we kind of tweaked them, and we thought, at the time, we could try and see if they worked during the off season, and we would just wait to put either surf or car related stuff out in spring or summer. And then Jan crashed, and those songs were kind of left over. So I took them, finished them, put some other rain songs on, and just made it, a whole theme.
Mm-hmm. The same thing happened with Carnival of Sound.
That was more Jan. We were trying to get Jan to just get him interested in something that could keep his mind occupied, and he still did love music, although he didn't have the same capabilities that he had before the accident, because he went from an IQ of 177 plus to 68, which is considered retardation.
My God.
So, doing music, he's still the part of the brain where his ego was, and the part of the brain that spoke to creating music was relatively okay. And so Lou Adler would give him studio time whenever the studios were not being booked. He was kind enough to let Jan come in and do stuff just to do it. Now, was it great? Not particularly, but that wasn't the point. The point was just giving him something that he could focus on, that he would enjoy doing, and that's what he enjoyed doing. So that project was more for just physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
To be truthful about it.
Yeah.
He didn't consider it that. So we, of course, we all pretended like we thought it was really good, participated, but, it was what it was.
I like them. I'll put them on the same list as Pet Sounds any day.
Well, I guess if you like it, I mean, that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all subjective now, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. What began your interest in graphic art?
I've always been interested in graphic arts, but mixing graphic arts with music and music packaging, I had always understood, especially when we started to do music that were pretty much themed, again, like the beach culture or car culture, that we should do thematic albums. Every song on the album should be about that particular theme, or at least come close to all being about the theme. And in my mind, it was all visual stuff. I mean, you're conjuring up visuals when you have some kid in Fargo, they're listening about young people being in the water and surfing and playing volleyball and all those things that you do, you know, in a state or a town that has a beach. You're conjuring up all of those visuals. So if this record is coming out and it's an album and you have a 12 by 12, actually 12 and 3/8, but 12 and 3/8 square, you know, instead of just putting a headshot on there, which was standard when we first got into the business.
Right.
This is where you show visually what it is you're singing about. Duh. And the written word on the back should relate to the visual on the front and the music within. Pretty simple. I was stunned that somebody wouldn't instinctively think of it that way.
Yeah. I mean, you did graphic art for Beach Boys, Harry Nilsson, Steve Martin, a lot of great people. And you even won a Grammy for Pollution by Pollution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should have never won. Should have never even been nominated for that one. I got nominated 3 other times, too.
Did you feel that there was someone else that was more deserving that year?
God, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just putting together a book about it also. This is all back to thinking about it. And I found the announcement in Billboard magazine of the, I guess it was 6 or 7, at least 6 covers that made it into the top 6. And I knew at the time, I didn't really, it didn't really bother me too much that I got nominated for it. That sounds pretty silly, doesn't it? But I figured I wasn't going to win, which was okay. So it was nice to be nominated, but you know, that particular cover I didn't want to be known for particularly. And wouldn't you know, that was the one. The others that I got nominated for, I would have been very proud of, and they executed what a graphic designer working in the music industry should be trying to accomplish. That's branding. You're branding the artist that whose music is in that package.
Mm-hmm.
So to do a cover, and I was told by the record company that they wanted to do this. This was the concept they wanted to do. And I tried to talk them out of it. They didn't get talked out of it, and they pretty much forced me to do it. So I found a photographer who would actually execute the dang thing, because it was basically photography. Mm-hmm. We did it, and then we won the Grammy. But in my mind, we didn't do the artist any good. We should be in the business if we're doing packaging for a musical entity. That's who we're creating this package for, and not something for ourselves. Now, if you look at that cover, and that's the cover with the chicken with the gas mask on, right?
Right.
Well, you look at that and you go, okay, that's clever. I mean, I like the cleverness of it. I never put that down. I thought the photographer who actually built that little face mask and all that, I thought that was really, really clever. So as an image, it's great. It's kind of cute.
Yeah.
But did it do anything for the artist? The poor artist. And the poor artist, that group put together 12 songs and worked on them for 6 or 8 months, and then they didn't even get their picture on the front or the back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's that all about. So if a consumer is even going through at a music store and is going through the piles of new recordings, and they come across, they see it's a brand new group. So they kind of, if they're just scrolling through and they come across that cover, and they kind of go, is this rock and roll? Who are these people? Are they rock and roll? Well, looking at the chicken, maybe it's a country record, maybe jazz, maybe, and then they turn it over to see if they could get another hint of what kind of music is this. And there's still no hint that then the chicken's on the back.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, dead. He wasn't really dead, but he looks dead. I don't want anybody suing us now. And then maybe the song titles might, but they weren't all that big, give you a hint to what kind of genre this is. And by that time, the consumer's gone past it, moves on. So I just felt it was really unfair to the artist. I thought it was not what we should be doing. We should be creating a package that is part of the branding, or we're helping to create a brand for the artist that sets that artist apart from other artists.
Mm-hmm. Did you get nominated for Steve Martin's Comedy Is Not Pretty?
No, didn't.
Yeah, because I can't imagine that one getting nominated just because of how funny he looks on that cover, dressed as a woman.
Well, he's a bizarre guy. I mean, he thinks bizarre. He himself is quite opposite from the character that he plays. But he's pretty brilliant.
He is.
Well, it's a good cover. I don't think it was, in terms of graphic design, it was not, not great.
Not groundbreaking.
But it was perfect for his branding. That's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to make him the star, doing what he does, and even if it isn't clever to other people because he's, dressed in drag, it doesn't matter. That's who he is. That's the brand that we're promoting. And to not do that just would be absolutely just stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And the covers that I beat, by the way, going back to the pollution thing, I beat out Sticky Fingers.
Oh, the Rolling Stones album, yeah.
Andy Warhol. I mean, chicken coming out of an egg or Sticky Fingers, which was perfect for the Stones branding.
Mm-hmm.
You'd expect to see something outrageous because they're the Stones.
Yep.
And to have an actual cover with a zipper on it, never been done. Absolutely never been done.
Yep.
I would have thought if I designed that, and first of all, to get a record company to actually pay for it, because normally they don't want to spend anything extra. They used to argue over printing stuff on the dust cover that the record sits in. That was an extra quarter of a cent,
Mm-hmm.
So to actually be on a record company label that they understood that that's who the Stones are and that that's part of their branding, and put up the extra money to put a zipper on each album cover.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty neat. So that package did everything that you would ask for in terms of designing a package for a certain group, and that happened to be the Stones. So I have no idea why we ended up beating something like that. Easy.
Mm-hmm. In 1978, there was the Dead Man's Curve TV movie. Were you happy with the way that turned out?
For what it was, heck yeah.
Yeah.
And what it was a TV movie, which at the those weren't usually all that great. They didn't have great budgets.
Nope.
But this one had a reasonable budget, some low budget. They did spend some pretty good money doing it. And so it wasn't anything to be embarrassed about. They also hired a guy that was a Janadine fan.
Hmm.
So I knew that, I just hoped that were going to sign a good director, because it could have gone a lot worse. They happened to sign a perfect guy. He happened to be a neighbor. He lived like 10 minutes from me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to, go to his house like every other day as we were tweaking the screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
Because the original screenplay really sucked. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But I kept being told, when the director comes on board, he has the discretion of changing it as much as he wants. I said, thank God, okay. Then you hope you got the right director. You might get a director, no, this screenplay is going to be nominated. Yeah, nominated for the trash heap. But this guy was really good. He was a fan. He liked, he liked the Janadine story. Thought it was intriguing. And so you can't compare it to a big Hollywood movie where tens of millions of dollars are spent. But for television, it was pretty damn good. And it was very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I got to go to every day of shooting, and I was allowed to sit right in front of the actors, and if I saw something, I was welcome to, put my hand up and say, wait a minute, we got to redo that, or it should be done this way.
Yeah.
And the actors liked that too. They wanted it to be as accurate as possible.
Yeah.
It was all good.
Yeah, Bruce Davison did a good job playing you. I met him a couple of years ago. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he was, out of everybody on the show, he was the real actor of the bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Richard Hatch. I mean, I think he did a good job playing Jan.
Yeah.
But he's
good, but
yeah,
kind of a journeyman. Good. And he had a great face. He did look a lot like Jan, except for he's a little bit darker complexion. He had dark hair.
Mm-hmm.
But facially, it was pretty accurate, pretty neat, and a good guy.
Yeah, and he was.
Actually, the more complicated part was mine. So, just the interaction between Janadine. So, having Bruce Davison, a really accomplished A-list actor, it was really good, and yet he didn't overact so much you took away from Jan, because Jan was the main character. It was because Davidson was such a pro, he knew how to do that. But his acting stuff was spot on, and was the more difficult one to make work.
Mm-hmm. In 1988, you and Jan guest starred on the new Gidget. How was that experience?
I don't even remember it.
You don't?
Oh.
Yeah, Karen Richmond, who played Gidget on there, she's been on here twice. She's a dear friend of mine, and so I had to ask.
It was kind of a friend of a friend, I think. I had a friend of Lou's or something. Somehow we did it just because we were friends with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That we wanted to, if they wanted us badly enough, we would do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember it much. It was a cool idea.
Yeah.
No, the real Gidget.
Oh, Sandra Dee?
No, that's the actress that played the real Gidget.
Oh, okay. So
And I forgot her name at the moment, but she still does a lot of, especially surf events. She shows up at those, which just kind of fun. And that nice lady, her dad named her Gidget, I think. Or he wrote the Gidget book.
Mm-hmm.
I think the surfers named her, and then the dad realized that was a great name, and he actually wrote the book about her adventures.
Mm-hmm.
And the other people just played her parts.
Mm-hmm. So did you talk to Jan all the time leading up to his passing?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty busy. All the time, no. But since we're pretty busy, we would see each other at least every other week. You know, either flying somewhere and then playing and then flying home.
Mm-hmm.
He did have a wife that he met on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did have somebody to be his companion. So there was somebody there taking care of him. But he didn't really need to have a bunch of friends, because we would I'd say about every 2 weeks we would be on an airplane with our 5 or 6 other guys, and they would, it was like a camping trip.
Mm-hmm.
All the boys going out for a couple of days and then coming home. So it worked.
Mm-hmm. How did you find out about his passing?
Yeah, I guess his wife called, said he'd had a seizure, which I had seen. I'd seen at least 5 or 6 seizures
Mm-hmm.
in the 20 years that we did after his accident. So they weren't real common. I mean, he had Dilantin, I think it was called. He had meds that usually kept him from having a seizure. But every once in a while, when he got too tired or something, he would get a seizure. And they were very violent.
Oh,
A lot of shaking, and his eyes would roll back. And they were awful. So, in other words, they really would affect him physically. And it was just a matter of time before, at his age, that if he had a really violent seizure, probably his heart would stop. And this particular one, it did.
my God.
He wasn't well. We knew. I had already kind of, I think that last year or so, we were calling our tour kind of the Aloha tour.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't believe it. He didn't want to believe that. It kind of pissed him off. But I knew that he wasn't. I wasn't sure. I didn't think he was going to die. I wasn't, or I didn't know. He wasn't all that great a shape. But I just knew physically he was not going to be able to do it much longer. And we were already doing more dates than we should, in the condition he was in. So I'm just thankful he didn't die on the road.
Yeah. Do you miss him every day?
I think about the old Jan
Mm-hmm.
a lot. The one that was brain damaged. I'm glad he's at peace now, because he was not happy. For 20 years he wasn't happy. He remembered how much he had and how much he did, and after the accident he was almost the exact opposite than what he had been before. And yet he had just enough brain damage to have to struggle, but not enough that he wouldn't remember what he had. And that always bothered me. It was just, he did something stupid and paid the price for it.
Yeah. It's almost, it's like what James Dean did in the 50s,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you risk it all if you get in a car and drive beyond the speed limit where you should be.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be driving down a street going 70. Yeah, he was in a residential street driving way over 70, coming into a school zone, which was 5 miles an hour, I think, or 15.5. And he was jammed. If he felt like driving 70, he was in a hurry, and he was going to do it. And he was usually lucky. He would escape these things somehow, but this time he didn't.
Mm-hmm. You have a book called Surf City. Is that available on Amazon?
I think so. Yeah. I haven't paid any attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just still out there. I'm glad I wrote it. I'm glad I finally put everything down. I didn't really write a book. I wrote just recollections.
Right.
I used to write on flights. We did a lot of traveling in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Through up the mid-90s. And instead of sitting there wasting my time, I used to have a notebook and I would just chronological order before I forget it. Just write about our adventures and how much fun it was.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody got a hold of me and said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" I said, "I think it's already written."
Yeah.
Then I just had to get it on. I guess I sat at the computer and just read it in the computer and typed it. So all of a sudden, in a couple of weeks, I actually had a book that was pretty well done.
Nice.
So it was kind of fun to actually get it buttoned up and finished, and so that I could scratch that one off my bucket list.
Mm-hmm. When quarantine's not going on, do you still perform?
Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot of corporate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I did a New Year's Eve, a very interesting New Year's Eve at the Mar-a-Lago for New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
You know where that is?
Try to figure that one out.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
That's Trump's house.
Oh God.
Palm Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had played there before with the Beach Boys, maybe 15 years ago, private party,
mm-hmm.
out on his lawn, under a tent. It was a cool party. I knew nothing about him except I knew he was rich.
Yeah.
And we were playing at his house, and his house has 120 bedrooms. But it's an old house, it's an old classic house. It was owned by actually is owned by an heiress of something, gum or something, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I didn't know much about him other than that. But he had turned the house into, because he had all these rooms, he turned it into kind of his own club. And his friends could come over and stay and bring their families and stuff, and play golf. And every Saturday they would have a live concert, mostly during spring, I think spring, part of summer,
mm-hmm.
in Florida, because it was kind of hot. But he would have live shows that he'd pay for, and people could come and see it for nothing. And we were one of those shows. And I remember thinking, hey, the guys were really nice. I heard some of their names. I knew that they were, wealthy dudes, and they all seemed to be, there were no egos. I knew more musicians that had terrible egos than these guys, and they were all very nice. I enjoyed playing for them. A group of young people right in front of us were dancing that I thought were teenagers. Well, no, I thought they were in their 20s. But cute kids, nice kids, well dressed. And I was flirting with this one girl that was pretty cute. And one of the Beach Boys came over and said, it was probably Mike. He says, that's Donald's daughter. I said, oh, she's 17. I said, oh, shit, I thought she was 25. I mean, she was dressed properly. She was articulate. She was, they weren't smoking or drinking or doing drugs. I thought, wow, I was pretty impressed. Nice kids. It's hard to be that wealthy and have nice kids.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. Well, Dean.
Anyway, so I've got to play New Year's Eve again at the Mar-a-Lago. A little bit different terms this time, but it was still fun. A lot of nice folks.
That's wonderful. Well, Dean, this has been such a great honor, and I hope after all this insanity ends, you get back on the road. I'd like to come see you play sometime. Just thank you so much for coming on today. Stay safe and happy Mother's Day.
Well, thank you, Tommy, and same to you. Now, I'll let you know next time we play. You'll be invited.
That would be wonderful. Hey, you have yourself a great rest of your day, sir.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Talk to you later.
Well, there you have it. Dean Torrence. Ain't he a cool dude? Oh my God, what a wonderful man, huh? Wonderful, courageous life. I'm in awe. I am. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Rest in peace, Little Richard. Later, dudes.